Georgia Tech, Thanksgiving, college football playoff rankings, Legge and Dyland Webber, Thanksgiving edition of Riding Home, riding through over the woods and what is it? Over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house. That literally described my.
Isn't that a Christmas song?
Is it? I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to dispute that.
I feel like when we sang it in elementary school, it was in a Christmas context, but I feel like that line at least applies to any holiday, really.
Well, I'm going to let you know right now, when we were going up to Hiawassee, Georgia when I was a little kid, it was definitely over the river and through the woods.
A lot through the woods there, man.
Yeah, there is. You know Hiawassee as well. It's definitely plenty of woods. Tech in Georgia. I got a chance to listen to Jeff Collins yesterday with his weekly press conference, which was interesting. It took him about 10 minutes to start talking about this game out of a 30-minute press conference or so. He didn't make eye contact very often with the camera or the people sitting there, so that was curious. But
what was he looking at?
He was looking
off in the distance.
It appeared that he was. I was not there. It appeared on the video that he was just looking down the whole time. And occasionally he would look up, but I guess he had notes. He had things scribbled on his hands. But the one thing that he said was that he was looking for something where they, this is something that I think a lot of coaches do on Sundays. They look for explosive plays from the other team, and that Georgia's reel was about 8 plays long, and that he asked the person helping him, the GA, where what the mistake was, where were the other plays. And they said, that's it, Coach. It's just those plays. So 8 plays this season. And Georgia Tech's offense has really struggled this year, Dylan. I don't know how much of the Jackets you've watched. I've watched them play live once, but on TV a couple of times. They're struggling on offense for sure.
Yeah, it's just not going to work against Georgia. I mean, we've had this conversation dozens of times. A lot of this stuff ain't going to work against Georgia. If you're not a really good offense, you're going to really struggle.
So just to review, Tech, and I think Clemson and Georgia are comparable defensively, but Tech has scored 14 against Clemson, 14 against South Florida. Of course, they lost to the Citadel, scoring 24 in overtime. Did not score at all on offense. A 24-2 loss to Temple. Scored 22 against North Carolina, 23 against Duke, 28 in another overtime game, this time against Miami, a team that has fallen on hard times for sure. Pitt held the Jackets to 10 points, 28-point burst from Tech against Virginia, and then didn't score against Virginia Tech, and then a tight win over NC State, 28 points. So I'm trying to remember just now. I don't think Tech has scored over 30 points this season. That is a recipe for disaster against this Georgia team.
Yeah, because the teams they're playing aren't that great.
No.
What was the game they had 2 in? Was that Temple?
That was Temple, which was where Jeff Collins came from last year.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're putting up 0 points on offense against a Temple team, you're probably going to struggle against Georgia too.
Well, it looks like they haven't scored a touchdown in 2 games this season so far. The loss to Citadel was bad. Although, as we've seen in college football and even in college basketball as of last night with Duke and Kentucky losing a week ago with Evansville, you can lose. I mean, you can lose to bad teams. But I think
Georgia against South Carolina.
Yeah, no question. I ran into somebody today that's a Carolina fan, and they said that I said, "Well, are you going to go?" He said, "Yeah, I'm going to take my medicine." And he said it was as bad as he's seen it at South Carolina. And I said, "Well, that's really saying something. I mean, that's a program that survived a 1-10 season, followed up by an 0-11 season. I mean, they were just straight awful for a long time. I'm not sure I'm ready to say that about Carolina. I'm not sure this is the lowest point for Tech because they have optimism about the future. Do you have optimism about the future for Tech?
It's hard to say in year one. There's definitely potential there because we've talked about the kind of players that come out of Atlanta, the football talent in high school that comes out of Atlanta. So there's potential for Georgia Tech to make something of itself. It's just can they? It's going to be a tough transition, one that will take several years to get rolling. But I would say they can definitely get something at least stable there.
Well, and the question is Jeff Collins the guy to get you where you got to go? I mean, when you look at, in my lifetime, Georgia Tech has had four 10-win seasons. Those came in 1990, 1998, 2009, and 2014. So, I mean, I couldn't say how many losing seasons they've had. Just off the top of my head, I see 1, 2, 3. This will be their 13th losing season since 1977, and they've had 4 10-win seasons or more. I mean, they've won their league twice in that time. I'm not counting 1998. You don't get it when you lose to the team that you're tied with. That's not a conference championship. So they've won the conference twice. This is not a good conference. It's had good teams, but not a good conference. I don't know what you do if you're Tech. I mean, I think if you're Georgia, you go in, you handle this business as quick as you can. Again, my math dictated that Tech is 14 and 41 against Georgia. I think it was since they left the SEC. Not like they were blowing the SEC up at the time, but they were certainly better in the 50s. 1963 came. They got into a big tussle with Alabama specifically about the amount of players who could be signed at any given time. And that point forward, they had a couple of 9-win seasons, 1966, 1970. And then, of course, that was it between the time that they were in the SEC and in the ACC. Of course, Georgia kept playing them. I guess in theory, the Dogs could have dropped them, which leads me to my next question, Dylan, the next couple of questions. Number one, can you? I know. So the audience doesn't really know this, but Dylan grew up in Texas, in Austin, Texas. So his frame of reference for Georgia and the history of Georgia is limited to about 2016. But what would it be like if now that you've dealt with being at Georgia and so forth? What would Georgia be like without Georgia Tech on the schedule?
Personally, I don't think that different. I just don't think people care as much about Georgia Tech as they used to, for sure. Just because Florida, for sure, is the biggest matchup for Georgia each year. I think people at Georgia dislike Tech more, but more so because they're just kind of pretentious students who are like, oh, I got into Georgia Tech. Like, Georgia is inferior academically. But when it comes to football, they really just – it almost doesn't matter to them. We talked about this yesterday or a few days ago. I can't remember when. But it's really a lose-lose matchup for Georgia because if you win, well, cool, you were supposed to win. You were never supposed to lose that game. But if you lose, then it's a complete embarrassment. 2016, that was a complete embarrassment for Kirby Smart.
Well, twice this decade, there are only 2 wins this decade, the Jackets have been comeback wins in Athens, games that, they should not have won. I mean, you look at 2014, Tech played really hard, really disciplined the whole thing that day. They really fought. I mean, they played like champions, frankly. But, there's no scenario where they should have won that game, and just none. It was breakdown by Mark Richt. It was breakdown by Jeremy Pruitt. It was both. And, before everybody points the trigger points the gun at Mark, Jeremy Pruitt's defense was lined up poorly, not just the whole day, but certainly on that last play. And the kid scrambles to where, you get a 14 or 20-yard scramble, and that can't happen either. So there was much to be done there. And then you fast forward to 2016, and Georgia was up 27 to I can't remember exactly how much they were up, but they were a 2-score. They were up 13 points in that game. And, that that they came back and won that game, Tech. That was a tough one, and that was the reason why Nick, Sony, and a lot of those guys came back. I mean, that was a 14-point rally in the fourth quarter by Tech to win that game. It was an amazing comeback, frankly.
I remember Nick was pissed after that game too, and I think he has said before that immediately after that game he was kind of just done with it. I think he was planning on leaving at that point.
Yeah.
Well, just because the frustration that was in him for that game, and I don't really remember Sony or any of the other guys, but I remember specifically talking to Nick and just how kind of done with it all he was.
That's, I've experienced in person the losses to Georgia Tech in 2014, 16, 2008, 2000, 99, 98. Before that, I did not see Tech beat Georgia. I was at games where Georgia won. But there's nothing like losing to Georgia Tech that can clear your mind for the future at Georgia. I mean, it's the reason why Jim Donnan was fired, losing 3 times to Georgia Tech. It's just unacceptable at Georgia. That just can't happen. Mark Richt,
especially now.
Well, even then, I mean, that is the reason why Jim Donnan was fired. He should have been fired. I mean, he just, he should have been fired. It was time. But Mark Richt never lost back-to-back games to Georgia Tech. The feeling going into that 2009 Tech game was that Georgia lost the week before to Kentucky, and the feeling was they're going to get beat by Tech. They could probably solidly get beat by Tech. This is very embarrassing. And what is the future of this program? That was 2 years after they won the Sugar Bowl, a season after they went 10-3 and started the year number 1. That's what Georgia Tech losses do to the program at Georgia. I mean, Vince lost some games back to back, but I don't think he ever lost 3 in a row. I'm pretty certain he didn't. And Georgia Tech beat Georgia 3 years in a row, but no, they never did with Vince. I mean, when he took over, and that game was critically important. They lost back-to-back games in 69 and 70. They lost back-to-back games in 84, 85. That was bad. Now that was bad. And then, the 89-90 when Tech, Georgia was really bad those 2 years, 6-6 and then 4-7, I think. Those were not good Georgia teams on top of very good Tech teams. And then, 3 years in a row in 1998, 1999, and 2000. 1998 was Joe Hamilton and company. Georgia had some tough calls in those stretches, certainly in 1999. I mean, that was bullshit. But in 2000, Tech just beat Georgia's brains in, and that's when, it's 27-15, and that's when the powers that be said, that's it. We're not doing this anymore, and Jim Donnan was fired. It was very quick, man. That was a very quick thing. And, Kirby lost his first game, and I think Tech is going to, Kirby lost his last game to Georgia Tech as a player, and he lost his first game as coach to Georgia Tech as a player. And I'm going to tell you something, man. That might be the worst thing that has ever happened to these Jackets, because he's coming after their ass forever. I also think too, let me spit this out and we'll hear what you have to say and then move on to Thanksgiving. But I think to some degree Tech focuses too much on Georgia. I mean, I saw that so much in Clemson, Carolina, and then Carolina just broke free when Spurrier got there and said, listen, yeah, I mean, it's a big game and everything, but we've got a lot of stuff to deal with. We can't do that. Paul Johnson never could get through at Tech that Georgia was not the end-all, be-all, the result of that game.
Well, and technically, I feel like it's, in a way, if you just look at what it means ranking-wise within your conference, it doesn't mean as much as your conference games. And
no, not at all.
I do agree I do agree that Tech probably focuses a little too much, but that's because Georgia is really their biggest rival.
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
With a bullet.
Yeah. But Georgia has 2 other rivals that are probably more important just because they're conference games and they're better opponents that they have tougher times with.
I think the other two clearly are bigger games, but I don't think Auburn is a bigger rival than Tech.
I agree with that.
Right.
I agree with that.
It's complicated, Georgia. I mean, I think that their biggest game every year is their rivalry with the Gators, period, full stop. I think, Cocktail Party is the biggest game. I think
because
that
it has the most on the
it
line.
matters the most. I mean,
yeah.
it determines whether you win the East and if you go on to play for the conference in the national championship. I can't think of a time where Georgia has really challenged for the national championship when they've not beaten the Gators first. 2007, you can make that argument, but that wasn't the case in 80, 81, 82, and in 2017. You can make the case to some degree in 2002, but not. I may have misspoke a second ago. You can make the case maybe in 2002, but in 2007, they beat the Gators. They certainly were knocking on the door. Both those teams would have been playoff teams, but the Tech game is so personal for a lot of Georgia fans because it's an Atlanta-based game. This is going to sound crazy, but that game almost belongs in Atlanta every year. It just doesn't feel the same at Sanford Stadium as it does at Bobby Dodd because it's like it's really in your face at Bobby Dodd, whereas at Sanford, and it sounds bad, but it's sort of like Tech is just another team that comes in there. But in Atlanta,
I agree with the feeling.
Yeah, it's a personal, in-your-face kind of deal, and there's guys that people there's people that went to high school together that go to Auburn in Georgia, but it seems like there's a lot more Tech in Georgia, which of course makes sense. Although Tech's got a lot of Tech has a lot of cultural situations that make it a different institution than a lot of places it's surrounded by. And my family members who are my age, a little bit younger and a little bit older, they acknowledge that that's a real problem at Tech. And you're not going to have that at Georgia or Auburn or Florida anytime soon. So it's an issue. I do want to get into Thanksgiving in our limited time remaining here. Dylan, I want to read off the Thanksgiving menu for the in-law Thanksgiving. And
you're with the in-laws, huh? They
Yeah.
got Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I've got in-law Thanksgiving. You ready for this?
Let's hear it.
All right. And I guess if you want to write down, sort of, if you have questions. All right, we're going to go with, again, this is Dean Leggie's in-law Thanksgiving menu. Which is to say that this is what the in-laws make. This is not of my choosing.
That's not good.
This should become pretty obvious that that's the case. 3-bean casserole, carrot casserole, pineapple casserole, congealed salad, macaroni and cheese in the crock pot, collards, cranberry sauce, which I think is going to be made not from a can, rice, gravy, dressing, turkey, shrimp pasta salad, sweet potatoes, deviled eggs, and rolls. The desserts, I was told by my mother-in-law to prepare one dessert, that they had 2 apple pies already and they didn't feel like they needed more. So I was charged with making one dessert. So I don't know where you want to start with that.
Why do you have 3 casseroles? How many casseroles do you need?
That's technically 4 casseroles because macaroni and cheese is a casserole, believe it or not. But
crock pot mac and cheese too.
That's bullshit. Yeah.
Pineapple casserole?
What is
Thanksgiving?
What is carrot casserole?
I don't know, man. You tell me. You're the one who's about to eat it.
No, I ain't eating that. Does that sound terrible to you?
Yeah, the 3-bean casserole sound like the best, and I'm not a big 3-bean casserole fan. It's fine. It's all right.
You're not looking at this, but the one thing that maybe the audience might, that's one meat, and it's turkey. Like,
yeah. Wait, what about ham? You're not gonna have any ham? I think you gotta have a little bit.
Can we just talk about turkey for a second? Turkey,
sure.
You're pushing it. Like, it's tough to make turkey. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Turkey is overrated. It's good.
Completely overrated. Completely.
Do y'all have stuffing?
Well, we have dressing,
Did I
which
miss
is
that?
essentially the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
stuffing,
Okay. Okay.
dressing.
Okay.
You know, everyone down here's panties really get wrinkled if you call it something other than dressing, and it's just like, all right. I mean, just relax.
Whatever.
We're
Whatever.
not burning American flags here. Okay, just it'll be all right.
Yeah.
We're eating something called congealed salad, and you're worried about if it's called dressing or stuffing.
The shrimp pasta too. It's like
Aggressive.
that's like a. I feel like that's like a Cheesecake Factory meal, not like a Thanksgiving meal or dish. You know.
I just. I mean, what should Thanksgiving be in your mind?
Food wise,
Yeah, I mean, like,
necessities are turkey, stuffing. Um, those are the two biggest things. I think mac and cheese is a necessity. Rolls, of course. There's not a lot of green in my ideal Thanksgiving, just by the way.
same.
Usually my grandma makes a 3-bean casserole. That's pretty good. I'm cool with it. She always makes chicken and dumplings, which I love. Her dumplings
that'd be
good.
awesome. I'd be all over that now.
Chicken and dumplings.
I'd be all over
not a
that.
necessity, but
I don't know.
it's good. It's better than the carrot casserole, pineapple casserole. Y'all's bullshit. I don't know, man.
So
Y'all Thanksgiving sounds weird.
So here's the other thing to me though is like the restriction on. I'm really most disturbed by the dessert restriction.
Yeah, let it be free.
I mean, I just don't understand that. Like, what is the point of? Like, I do think you have to have the obligatory turkey. I don't think turkey is good. Number one, I think it's not good because it's really hard to make correctly.
It's usually really dry.
It's very dry. Because we cook that bitch twice a year at most. Okay? It's a tough meat to make. Okay? So I'm bringing ribs. I'm making ribs. I'm not about confrontation. But I want to eat.
Well, it sounds like you're walking towards one with your in-laws if you're going to show up with ribs.
Well, not all of them. Because they'll want them. Here are the desserts.
True.
Okay? I was told to make one dessert. So I've gotten the okay from my wife. We're gonna go with, and also too. How do you not have pecan pie at Thanksgiving? What is this?
Agreed with that. Yeah, I think it's a necessity. I think it's a necessary dessert.
I would almost argue that you got to have pumpkin pie too, but I'm not trying to fight everybody.
No, pumpkin pie is.
Sweet potato pie to me is just never. I'm not about that.
I'm not here for it. All
right, so here we're gonna every Christmas / Thanksgiving I try to incorporate a new thing. So we did anyway. We're gonna do pecan pie, which is common. I've never done maple pecan. I've never done maple syrup pie before. We're gonna go with that. You've had my cookies before, I think, right?
No, we've had this conversation.
Oh
you have never made me your cookies, you jackass.
All right, so we're gonna have the giant Toll House cookies. Each recipe makes 12, not 24. We're going to go with creme brulee, which is definitely very, that they like that. And then something called chocolate angel pie, which is essentially just for my wife because she likes it a lot. I think it's good. I don't think it's anything that's unreal. And the other thing is, I want to broach this subject before we get off. Like you're at your grandma's house. Like my grandmother lived in a trailer. Okay. Before, after she moved out of the house that my mother grew up in, which was built in the 20s, grandma lived in a trailer. So we had Thanksgiving in the trailer. Here's my question. Here's my delicate question. Why has it got to be so hot? Like, and how do you mitigate the heat at grandma's house or your in-laws' house? Like, it shouldn't be over 80 degrees. And like at grandma's, it was at like 83. So we would just open the doors.
Yeah.
What are you doing? How do you broach that subject? Or does your dad, is he like, listen, don't bring up the heat, okay?
No, I'll usually just go outside. At my grandma's house, we usually just step outside while they're cooking. And we'll eat inside, but we'll hang out outside. And it might be like 40, 50 degrees, but we're cool with that because it is hot as shit inside.
I mean, even in Hiwassee, man, I'm like, Mom, listen, it is hot in here, and there's 40 people coming already. We need to cool it down in here. And the fans
Get a
are
bunch of
not.
box fans.
Yeah, well, but the fans aren't working because you got the heater on and it's 60-something degrees outside. You need to chill this out.
I just don't turn on the heater. We don't turn on the heater in our household.
Crazy, man. It's
in
crazy.
Athens.
It is crazy. The whole point, I think, of Thanksgiving, to me, is about creating. You don't have children that you're aware of, so I do. And I think that, for me, it's about making sure that they remember what the day was or is or whatever. And almost always, that deals with, creating the food. So I'm not doing one dessert. That is un-American, first of all. It's certainly un-Leggy-like. And we're going hard in the paint. I don't know if I'm going to make all these today or not.
You know, I feel like Matt DeBerry would be offended if his in-laws tried to tell him, hey, yeah, you can only bring one dessert. I feel like he would be personally offended. And you're right, that is un-American.
It is. We're going to fight over stuffing or dressing, but we're only going with 2 desserts? Like, is this communist China? Are we in Cuba right now?
Eat the damn food. Just eat it.
Are we in Tehran, or is this, come on. We're out here.
We're in America, and we should eat more than one damn dessert.
These cookies are good. This pecan pie is awesome. Yes, I will have more. I will have more desserts because I can't eat this combination of congealed salad, pineapple casserole, and carrot casserole. What are we eating carrot casserole for?
There is no situation where that is acceptable.
Here's what the dog post user said on the menu. One says 3 bean casserole, period. I had that so many times over the years, comma, I will not let it into my house.
I will not let it in. I can see some of these dog post subscribers just seeing someone at the door and just going, hell no, man. Turn around. You're not coming today.
Well, one subscriber said I wouldn't go. And someone's talking about sweet tea and all this. Now, I don't like tea or sweet tea. It's not for me. I'm a real Atlantan, AT-alien, whatever you want to call it. I drink Diet Coke, Diet Coke, stuff like that. But you can't sort of do tea either, man. You got to do it right, or it's not going to be, people aren't going to consume it.
And that's what we are in the business of, that is having people consume our product.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Please subscribe. Please don't forward this to our in-laws, my in-laws, I guess. But they know, hey, listen, they know the deal. They know that this is about competition every day. We got to have multiple desserts. I'm not against apple pie. Yeah, I'm not against apple pie. I like apple pie. I like fried apple pie, okay, with ice cream on top. I can't eat all that, though. But Dylan, you'll be happy to know that I didn't eat that much for lunch today on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. I'm going to try to chill out as I make these desserts. We're just going to have to see how it goes.
Hey, nah, man, don't chill out. It's Thanksgiving. Go all out. Don't chill out. Go all out.
Tech in Georgia Saturday. Go to Dog Post after that. We're going to have some specials on the site on Saturdays. Well, on Sunday and Monday. Please go to dogpost.com, DAWGPOST.com. $2 for 2 months. Recruiting's about to heat up. Go subscribe to Look, I'm telling y'all to do too much stuff. Go have a happy Thanksgiving.